Hello and welcome to GPs and More. Kevin Magee, I'm Kev, and with me Scotty Stevens, the great Scotty Stevens, world Speedway star. How you going, Scotty?
Yeah, very well, Kevy. Thanks for that intro. Yes, mate. It's good to be back on the air doing this. You've been around 27 years, I think. You're at Foxtel, or 24, something like that.
27.
27 years. Well, there you go, mate.
Yeah.
And you were let go, and I don't think the show was any better once you were off there, because it was your show after all, mate.
It was a team effort.
Well, it was a team effort. I thought Chris Van Meulen was fantastic, but and the different compares you had over the years were fantastic. But we've sat there in many a pub and talked about this, only because there isn't any real great. There's a few out there in podcast world as far as the GPs go, or World Superbike or anything like that. But we just always thought that we'd put something like this together. And I have a speedway background, and yours is road racing. I've got motocross background as well, and hopefully we can put something together that the audience likes. So away you go, mate, with your wash up after the Australian Grand Prix. What were your thoughts on that after the fact?
Well, I think it's going to be difficult. I've actually ridden a YZR 500 a couple of years ago at the Adelaide Motorsport Festival, in through the streets of Adelaide into the restaurant area where we had a big function. So that was a really good thing, but pretty wild riding a 500 two-stroke four-cylinder screaming thing around the streets of Adelaide.
Yeah.
But that was just a one-off for the crowd. The crowd was fantastic. The South Australians really get behind it, and there'll be lots of people coming over the border into South Australia for it. So I wish them all the best. I mean, you can't do anything else. It's got to be a good thing for motorcycle racing.
Yeah. Look, my opinion on the MotoGP circus is you've really got to have the rubber on the asphalt 100% of the time, and I think Formula One goes through this as far as street tracks go compared to motor racing tracks. And Phillip Island will be missed, and I can't believe that the Victorian government, where you live, has allowed this to happen. I mean, how hard was it to throw 20 million at it and build some new facilities as far as toilet blocks and whatnot? Like, you're sitting on the island down there where everything's getting battered with salt air. So obviously over a 20 or 30 year period, the concrete cancer has set in around there. So you've always got to update. But she just wasn't prepared to do that. And South Australia just came in under her, underneath what should have been another at least 10 years built up into the contract for Victoria. And now they've gone to this street race. And now I'm looking at these parks that they have, and it's only a matter of time before the greenies get involved, and they'll say, well, you need at least 50-metre runoff of a gravel trap or a sand trap for these MotoGP bikes, with the speed they're doing these days. I would imagine that's what you're going to have, and I can't see any track there, street circuit in Adelaide, that would allow for that to happen.
Well, exactly. And there's FIM, the Federation International Motorcyclists, that basically run and make the rules for Grand Prix racing, and the formulation of the tracks and the runoff, the meterage, the radius of the corner, the guesstimated speed, and the amount of runoff you need with gravel before you have like a solid restraint, obviously between the crowd and the motorcycle racing circuit itself. So there's a whole range of things that are going to have to happen. Eastern Creek did have their hand up for the Grand Prix too, but I think it was Dorna that's running it, that wanted the street circuit. They want to have more festival type Grand Prix racing, which it's kind of a strange mix where they're going to be able to get it to work. Having said that, the rules are changing next year. We're going from this year, Michelin is going to be Pirelli from next year, plus the engine capacity on MotoGP is going to be reduced back to 850. So, but as engineers do in Formula One, MotoGP, and just about every other thing, yacht racing, whatever it might be, the engineers find a way to go faster. So they'll probably end up back up around the 365 mark again, and then they'll chop something else off it. So there's the fuel supplies too, which is they're becoming sustainable. So they're using part green fuel at the moment. And yeah, it's all going to be interesting, but getting motorcycles safely racing around a street circuit is going to be hard work. You only have to look at the other end of the scale, Isle of Man.
Yeah.
Madness.
Yeah, no, 100%, mate. And that's what comes to mind, doesn't it? The bumps, their back wheel is off the ground 90% of, not 90% of the time, but 10% of the time around that track, where I don't know how that works for MotoGP. Yeah, just on that, Kevin, the last race there in Thailand, where Marquez's tyre blew, like I haven't seen a tyre go like that with the fracture of a rim like that, or the damage that was on his rim, from going wide into the marbles and obviously hitting something. But was his tyre going flat before that? You could see in the slow-mos, you could see the skid mark on the track before he sort of come off. Did you watch that at all?
Yeah, for sure. And we've got lots of that down here. That happens day by day in the Victorian potholes. So that's one thing. But that was up in Thailand on the curbs on a racetrack. And I've never seen anything like that either, Scotty. My hunch is that the tyre was slowly deflating, like happened to Joan Mir, but he picked it up before he chucked it in at full tilt. He realised he had a problem down the back of the bike and slowed down accordingly. Where Mark was trying to win the race for sure, and and when he's flicked it in there, my belief is it's partially deflated and he's hit the curb at pretty much almost full lean angle, and because the tyre didn't have the pressure it should have in it, it's been able to flex enough. It's still on the bead at that point. Then it's hit the peaks of the sawtooth curb, and that's what's caused the massive damage to that rim. And then, funnily enough, he was still turning left a little bit, and I think that was just enough to keep the bead more or less in place, even though the rim was completely dented. The tyre kind of was pushed because he was turning to the left, and it kept the left side of the tyre relatively on the bead, which it was not on it anyway. The bead wasn't there, let's face it. But it was only when he straightened up and it popped right off the left-hand side and we saw that shot of the damaged rim. But yeah, incredible stuff. And you'll see the black line down Mir's tyre. And what that's called hinging. I remember this happening in Hockenheim where we were doing over 300 Ks back in the late 80s. The tyres hinge. So if that's the carcass of the tyre at high speed, they go like that. And it really flexes through the middle there, the bit that's on the road. That's getting all the heat through it too. So it's a double-edged sword with the heat and the flex causes more heat. And my tyre at Hockenheim in 89 delaminated, as in the rubber came out about 2/3, 3/4 of the way around the tyre for about an inch, and was massively out of balance. I finished the race, but the rear tyre was massively out of balance.
Do you play devil's advocate? Do you believe? Would you think what I think, that it's Michelin's last year? I'm not saying that they'll go out of their way to demolish the tyre, but would they be putting the amount of work that you would think you'd be putting in, knowing that Pirelli start next year? I mean, I've never seen a Michelin perform like that. They've always been a great tyre. So I just don't know, mate. What are your thoughts on that, mate?
Well, you could say they may not be putting in the resources for the development, but Thailand, like Phillip Island, is a peculiar track for its tyre needs for MotoGP. And it's really hard to get it right when you've got so much heat in the atmosphere in Thailand and coming off the track surface. Then you whack, 300 horsepower through that little palm of your hand sort of contact patch on the rear wheel. And well, it's a bloody difficult job technically to get a tyre to hold up and perform.
Yeah. Yeah, I was anyway. I was a bit surprised. I've just never seen a rim demolished like that. Yeah. Anyway, so what were your thoughts on the rest of the race, mate? Aprilia have done so well. I mean, that's great.
Absolutely doing their homework in the off season, and it's looking like one of the better bikes. And we've got to bring in concessions here. Honda have lifted out of the D concessions, which is it's your allowances on your homologations for your aero. Excuse me. The amount of tyres you're allowed to use, the amount of engines you use during the season, couple of other things. So Honda have been performing that well and improving. They've gone out from the bottom category D up to C, and Ducati are in A, so they get the most restrictions because currently they're the best bike. Well, just before currently, because Aprilia has shown that they're the best now, certainly performing the way they did in Thailand.
Yeah. Well, so what happens now? Do Aprilia become the Ducati as far as the FIM or whatever the governing body does to them? Do they get restrictions on them now?
Well, they're in C already, so there's nobody in B. So Ducati's head and shoulders above the rest of the manufacturers, and I guess leading the championship, the four Aprilias were behind Pedro Acosta's KTM, and then sixth was Brad Binder on the KTM, and then there's a raft of Ducatis after that. So, like 2026 has really thrown up, the cat amongst the pigeons as far as expected, inverted commas, expected results go. Marc
Yeah,
Marquez would have been in there had he not had the problem, but hey, that's what racing is. It can be a 10-cent part or a $10,000 part that fails, or the rider fails. Tyres can fail. Yeah, it's on the edge, this motorsport stuff, especially in MotoGP, where everything's stressed to the nth degree.
yeah, yeah. So we go to Brazil now. That hasn't been raced on for up to 18 years, I believe. And you rode there, didn't you? So what would be the uptake in going to Brazil? As far as the travel goes, that must have been horrendous for any MotoGP team to get there, that is, especially from Thailand. That's around the other side of the world. So it would have been a pretty full-on job to get to do that, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, it was left Horsham down to Melbourne because it's the end of the season race, because you get home before that and then fly back to that one back in the days, late 80s. And 89, we're at Goiânia, where they're back to now. They haven't been there for probably 30 odd years.
What was that track like? Like as far as, did you ride on that track?
Yeah, it was, there's red dust on it. You get offline and you're sort of out in the gorilla snot, and it's very high altitude. Can't remember how high, but the 500s felt really gutless because the air's so thin. And same for the rider, you get tired because the air's so thin. But coming off the back of 108 hours to get there from Melbourne,
Yeah,
had
yeah,
overnight in Sydney because we hit Seagulls just out of Sydney, jettison fuel, then the curfew. So then all the connecting flights over to Miami and then down to Rio. Then there was 3 internal flights, I think it was,
yeah.
at least a couple. And I couldn't find a boarding gate for the last one, so I asked the airport staff, and they said, "Oh no, just take the back in the old days when you had all the slips in your plane ticket for each leg of the
Yeah,
journey."
yeah.
And faxes were magic then; they were brand new. And he said, "Take it out to the cab rank and get a cab." It was like 2.5 hours in this absolute piece of crap. Don't even remember what it was. Probably some old Seat or something. And potholes like you wouldn't believe. Missed the first day of practice and got there like 11:30 that night. First practice, just go out and do a couple of laps, come back in, have a huff and a puff, and get wound up again and go back out for another couple of laps. It was bloody hard work, but anyway, we got there in the end. And the
Yeah.
track, it's one of the old tracks where it's not just, your 90 degrees here and your 90 degrees there and your hairpin here and your hairpin there. It's like Phillip Island, like Suzuka, like the first half or first three quarters of Donington, where it's a real flowing track. So that's good, and it's been totally revamped in recent years. It was a real dump when we were there. Let's say that. There's no question about that. And yeah, Randy Mamola was back on the Cajiva on Pirellis back in the day, so he was just doing massive skids on the opening curve onto the front straight, just blue smoke coming off the back and sideways. Randy, he was
Yeah.
he was a mad
He,
bugger.
it was sensational, mate, having him there. Yeah, no, look, you would imagine everything would change now. Like, they wouldn't even get in a cab anymore. They'd have sponsored vehicles, Audi or whoever picking them up and drive them out there. It has come a long way. You blokes were, I remember Wayne Gardner saying when he was in England, he and his girlfriend at the time, Donna, was sleeping in the back seat of his Austin Kimberley, whatever it was. And that just never happened in, I'd say, Mick
Wouldn't have been
Doohan's
a
day.
Kimberley. They were a six-cylinder, weren't they?
Oh, I don't know. Anyway, it was a
Yeah,
sort
I
of
think so.
rounded looking thing. But I remember him
Yeah.
saying that. And, you forget that blokes like yourselves, your era, I think Mick Doohan probably came in when they had first class flights and 5-star hotels, the sort of silver spoon stuff. But I think that was the start of MotoGP. Well, MotoGP, what they call it back then, 500, came into the fore and started to look so much more professional than what it did back then. And I think
Yeah, there'll be a
TV
few.
rights does a lot.
Yeah, there'll be a few private jets probably going to Brazil too. Don't forget.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
So
right.
it's a
Well,
bit
that's
different
right.
to
Yeah,
bit
and
different to
you,
back in the day. But anyway,
yeah, that's right. Do you imagine any of the riders signing up for that these days? Prima donnas,
ah,
mate. Once you've been afforded that sort of lifestyle, you never go back. Yeah, you never go back. So I can see them flying their private jets into Brazil this weekend. And look, to be fair, if I was in that position, I'd probably do the same thing rather than go through the 10 different flights that you were just talking about. So, good on them. But now, what's your prediction for this weekend, mate? What the sort of layout of the track, and I would imagine the track has been somewhat upgraded since. Who do you think that size track would suit more? So, the Aprilia or the Ducatis?
I think the Aprilia is going to be magic around there because of what I said before about like Phillip Island and Donington's sort of first three quarters of a lap before they put that Melbourne Loop extension on it, which is just senseless. But anyway, it made the track long enough for Grand Prix. Yeah, Donington homologation. Um, yeah, and it's a real rider's track too because of the way it flows. And speed wise, it's got one decent straight. It's like 934 meters, I think it is. So you're gonna have a handful of throttle there for a while. And the right hander off it is a reasonably quick one. So and there's a lot of tricky places where when you get on the throttle and the bike's still got to turn. So you're going to have bike setup is going to have to be really good too, and your machine is going to have to be capable of turning with the throttle on. So as far as the Yamaha might be in strife a bit again with the lack of speed, but around the back of the circuit, Quadraro especially, not to mention Jack Miller, those boys know how to get around corners, as does Top Brack and Alex Rins. So, they'll lose out on the straight, but they'll be able to crawl all over them around the back half of the circuit. Well, the other 9/10 of the circuit, really.
Mm. And so, what about the young Turkish kid coming up from World Superbike to MotoGP? Seems like he's got the goods to stay up there with the top guys. You think?
I reckon he's going to give him a wake-up call. He was running with the quickest Yamahas there the weekend before last in Thailand, and I really do rate him. His old man was a stunt rider, so he'll try anything. You see him doing his crazy stoppies. Him and Jack Miller, they won the tuk-tuk race there that they had the other day, so they were being maniacs on the tuk-tuks. Jack pulled a wheelie off the line, then Top Rat's hanging out the side, getting her up on two wheels and all kinds of stuff, so that was a bit funny. But Top Rat, I think he'll give him the established MotoGP riders a bit of a wake-up call. You know, he's on the MR, which I said before is a bit slow, but they'll get the V4 worked out. And don't forget, we're changing to 850s next year, so it doesn't really matter. It's a bit more of a formulation year with the new V4 that Yamaha have been talking about for several years. So, and he's 3 times world superbike champion for no other reason than he can ride the wheels off something. He got on the BMW and thought it'd be a hard task, and I think from memory he won the World Superbike Championship the first year he got on it, after he got off the Yamaha.
Speaking of next year, hopefully we'll have a guest appearance on the show from the boss of Pirelli, an old mate of yours, and Pirelli take over the contract as of next year. How do you think their tyres will stand up for the MotoGP next year?
I think they're already getting information from Moto3 and Moto2 because they've been on them. I think this is the second year now, and they took over from Dunlop. So Dunlop varied decades and decades in the 125s, 250s, then Moto3 and Moto2. So Pirelli will have information on circuits there. I remember one thing years ago, Wayne Rainey and I were on the Dunlops, and I think it was over at Rijeka in Yugoslavia, and the Michelin technicians were there. We were running around the track, I think, and wondered what they were doing. So we pulled up and had a look. They were taking a plaster cast of the surface on the racing line so that they could get it back to the factory and recreate the surface from the plaster cast back the other way to get the actual surface back in their lab to see how to get the tyre to work best with that surface. So that's how detailed Pirelli are. Sorry, Dunlop are. Not Dunlop, Michelin, the other one.
Michelin.
French bastards.
Look, they've always been a great tyre, old Michelin, haven't they?
Yeah,
I remember
sure.
Years ago I worked for Roy Dennison Wholesale, and I had to sell the Michelin, and a lot of the motorbike shops didn't like to stock them because they were so expensive, and as opposed to everything else, like the Continental and whatnot tyres, they were just Metzlers, things like that. They'd like to stock them because they were a lot cheaper than the Michelin. But if you want to stay upright, I think Michelin was the way to go, 100%.
What about your Avon Roadrunner?
Well, I never rode on them, mate. But Speedway tyres are, Pirelli were always the go. So, and then and now they've gone to some other tyre over in Europe. But there was a lot of strain on the Pirelli, but you could, as a Speedway rider, you could turn that wheel around, go out in the next race. So you'd have your 5 rides a night, and you had your spare wheel ready to go in just in case. But that tyre would a lot of the times hold up for the. But now the knobbies have been taken down a bit, so things changed. But Pirelli were always a great tyre that I found anyway, racing around the world. So yeah, anyway, the one thing I want to ask you about is the performance of Marquez. How does he get his mindset back? He's 0 points at the moment. He looks at Bez and the boys.
No, he's 23 behind. So he's got about 8 points.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, how's he overcome that? I know you've got the rest of the season, but do you go into panic mode, mate? Like maybe not panic mode, but do you obviously go to sleep thinking about it?
Yeah, it's not the start you want to get, but having said that, if that happens early, you've got more time to recover. Someone else is going to have a bad weekend somewhere along the line, is the general thinking. So you're not too perplexed, but it is 23-point deficit to Pedro Acosta on the KTM. So, you can't rest easy when they make so many more points now with the sprint race for on Saturday, I should say. So he won't be panicked because he knows it was just shit luck, and that's literally what it was. Not his fault. He didn't get flung off it, fortunately. So he's not carrying any injury, so he can go into Brazil uninjured. But incidentally, it's a clockwise track, so it's a right-hander, and we know how much Marc Marquez, the dirt tracker, loves going left at Saxon Ring, at Circuit of the Americas. And on the Circuit of the Americas, they're going to have the World Bagger Championships over there too. Going to be racing around on Harleys with saddlebags on them.
Really? Yeah, he would have been a great speedway rider, little Marc Marquez, mate. He's the right size and loves his left-hand corners, mate. It was really good. So that rounds out our MotoGP segment. We'll be right back with Track Yak on GP Kevin Magee.
You're listening to GP with Kevin Magee.
Welcome back to GP with Kevin Magee. We've got Track Yak now. So what's going on around the globe, Scotty, in two-wheeled racing?
Okay, Kev. World Superbike, mate. The 2026 season has kicked off. The next round is in Portugal on the 27th and 29th. That's a nice track. The Italians are dominating so far. So come on, Remy, pull your finger out, mate. And Assen is coming, so I think that's the big square up, that track. It's a track that everybody knows well, fast flowing, and I think there might be a few different outcomes with that. As far as the Speedway GP goes, that starts on the 2nd of May this year at Landshut in Germany. It's a nice track, dark dirt, pretty good. So my Ty Wolfenen's pulled out. He's a 3-time world champion, and he was in a serious accident last year. So he's actually pulled out because I just don't think he's fit enough to go up to that next level just yet. But he will be. And it opens the door for the person, the young kid, is a Ukrainian kid, never had a Ukrainian in top flight Speedway. And he won the Speedway Grand Prix number 2 last year. So he comes up to the big fellas, the Speedway Grand Prix itself, which is great. And my pick for this year in the Speedway Grand Prix is Brady Kurtz. And I'm hoping that he didn't peak too soon last year because he was only within a couple of points, 3 points of winning the world title, I think. As far as the world motocross goes, we've already had a race there in Argentina that started off. Jeffrey Hurlings, I believe. He's a Dutch rider. He won the both races on the day, which is a great performance. He's with the HRC Petronas factory bike. He flew, so he's going to be a real force to be reckoned with this year. And then the next race is in Spain, so that's coming up next. Moving on to the women's WCR, starts on the 27th to the 29th of March in Portugal. They're all on identical YZF R7s, so that's a great thing to have in the field of 23 or 24, I believe. 6 rounds. So go Maria Herrera. She's fantastic. So hopefully she can go well this year. Okay, that wraps things up for Track Yak. We'll be right back with our predictions for Brazil.
You're listening to GP with Kevin Magee.
Welcome back to GPs with Kevin Magee. What we're going to do now is what I hate doing is making predictions. I'm not a predictor. That's up to the weather forecasters and probably politicians, the only two professions in the world where you can completely stuff your job up and still get paid. But anyway, we'll have a crack at it. What do you reckon, Scotty? The Aprilias, Ducatis, KTM's going to pop their head up again?
I think Marquez will come back, and I believe Bez will be in there probably second or third, and if not in third place, I think Alex may pull his finger out and have a go at this particular track.
Right. Well, as far as my predictions go, I'm just going to have to say I reckon Bezzecchi is on a roll. I reckon he's going to take the glory again, followed by Acosta, and Marquez is going to get a bit duffed up because Acosta's not scared one bit of Marc Marquez, and he gives as good as he gets. So, but I did notice there last race the actions of Marc Marquez when he had to let that one place go. He made sure that he cut straight across the nose of whoever the mug was in third place, dropped back from second. So Marquez made sure when he lost that one place, he just cut at turn 2 the next rider off. He cut straight across his nose so that he couldn't get overtaken by another rider, just the one he had to slow down for, Pedro Acosta. So Marquez, he's witty, and he is like unrelenting in the things he'll do on the racetrack. Thanks for tuning in to GP with Kevin Magee. Next episode, we'll be looking at what happened in Brazil, see how we went with our predictions, and seeing if Marc Marquez can run him to the wall at the Circuit of the Americas in 2 weeks' time.